It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I wanted to tell you about my stories of woe. It is New Year's 2025, and a couple of days ago I was going to redo my network cabinet that's sitting back here behind me. I don't know, you can probably see my giant mess right here. I showed you this a few years ago, and it had several large servers sitting in it that we just built this cabinet and kind of made it a really nice space to have those things. And I've been switching to low power hardware, and you can see that here and over here. And little by little, I'm trying to move to these different low power devices, or lower power devices. They're not low power, but they're much lower power than those giant servers that I was running. That said, I was trying to move some things around in that cabinet, and if you can see all of the wires on the wall right back here, you'll notice that I have a ton of networking running through my house, and it all kind of starts here and then branches out to all over the place. I started to work on these things the other day with my wife, and a couple of the network cables got loose, and they looked exactly the same, and I did not have them marked well, and that's my fault. And I went to plug them back in, and I think I created a feedback loop that somehow fried my main x86 based router. So this was just an HP machine that I've shown you in the past, and it had a built-in gigabit port and then an add-on card, PCIe card, that had 4 more gigabit ports, and that's how I ran my network with my VLANs and things like that. I kept trying to figure out why it stopped working suddenly. It took me half of a day just to figure out the problem, and when I finally realized, hey, the network card got fried somehow, it just wasn't even being recognized anymore by OpenWRT, I was like, okay, I've got to solve this. Let's head over to the store. The town I live in is very small. We have a Walmart. That's really it. There is nowhere else to buy routers in this town. So I headed out and I said, okay, let's get this thing set up, and we will just buy a new router, very hopefully inexpensive router, and I will put OpenWRT on it. Except I went to Walmart, and literally not a single off-the-shelf router in that store would support OpenWRT according to the OpenWRT hardware pages. So I don't know if that's intentional on the part of Walmart or on the part of the people who are sending them the stuff that they want them to sell. It's just so strange to me that not a single one. Not that they had a huge selection to begin with. Literally thousands of routers in the world, and they had about 5 models. That was it. So I just bought one that was pretty inexpensive by comparison to the rest of them. I brought it home, set it up, and I hate it with a passion. TP-Link, if you ever see this video, please, for the love of all that is holy, stop popping up a question to ask me if I want to set up the cloud service. Once I dismiss it, leave it away. Don't show it to me anymore, at least for like a week or something. Like, oh my gosh, that is the most annoying thing on the planet. I want to run things locally. I don't need your cloud service. Anyways, rant over. I got that router set up, I got everything set up, and then I realized, hey, my home services still aren't being found. Why? I set up my port forwarding. I am on a ISP that does give me a public IP address, but it is a dynamic IP address. Now, it does not change very often. The only time it really changes is if I change my routing hardware, which I knew that was going to happen, or if the power goes out for a significant amount of time, and I'm talking like more than a day, then it might give me a new IP address. This time it did give me a new IP address, so I went into my DNS entries and I changed the IP address, and I was not paying attention. And I did not set up a CNAME record, and I don't know why, because I'm just crazy, for my asterisk, my wildcard entry. So I actually had 2 entries, and my @ entry, I changed it to the new public IP address. I waited, and I pinged just my general domain, and it came back with the correct IP address, and I still couldn't get to my services, and I couldn't figure out why. And I kept rechecking everything and thinking something was wrong with the TP-Link router, not forwarding correctly. I just couldn't figure it out. And finally I went back and looked at my DNS more carefully, and when I scrolled down, way down on the page was my wildcard entry, and it was a straight up A record, and it had the wrong IP address. So for a day, I kicked my own backside just trying to figure out why I couldn't get to these things. All of that aside, it was just miserable not being able to get to my services and things like that. And I had a solution. I'm already using a solution for this. I already use Netbird. And Netbird should have been the way that I had things set up in the beginning. So that's what I've been doing for the last 4 hours or so, I guess. Besides moving things to this lower power hardware and trying to get things straightened out over there, I'm moving all my services to use my Netbird network. Now there's some really cool features about Netbird that I love. One, it's completely open source. It is fully self-hosted. It is the clients, the server, everything about it is open source. That is a plus for me. I know Tailscale's out there. Tailscale's great. Okay. I don't like a closed source backend where they control it and I don't have the ability to have that under my control. It's about that trust thing. That said, if you like something like Tailscale, you might look at Netbird. You might go check it out for your business. Maybe you use it at home on your own and you self-host it, but you also work for a company as an IT person or a technical advisor or an MSP. This is an incredible, incredible, powerful platform to connect up everything together and to control it and to segregate it and to have access control. It's absolutely an amazing platform. If you haven't checked it out, you should. I've got videos on it already. I'll point back to those, but I'm also going to show you how I'm setting this up to basically route things from outside on the internet into my network using Netbird. And there's a couple of different ways you can do that. And I'm going to use both of those methods actually. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. I mean, this is just one of those things where you don't have to go through the pain that I've been going through. One, document your network. If you have a fairly complicated home network, if it's not just a single Wi-Fi router that everything connects to, document your network. It's very important for you to do that. Two, make sure that you understand how your DNS is set up and make sure you set it up correctly. And if at all possible, if your wildcard points to the same place as your main domain, just set your wildcard up as a CNAME record. Don't do like I did, like an idiot, and put it as a separate A record. Believe me, you'll save yourself some trouble down the road. And finally, setting it up the way that I'm going to show you is going to be worthwhile. Now, maybe you use an Oracle free tier system. It's up to you. Maybe you use a really cheap DigitalOcean droplet. I have an affiliate link in the description below if you want to try DigitalOcean. If you've never tried it, go grab that affiliate link. It'll give you $50 credit for 2 months. If you stay with them and you start paying for services, I get a credit. If you don't, it's okay. I don't get a credit, no big deal. But I do want to be transparent. I will get a credit if you use my affiliate link and you stay with DigitalOcean for service. There are all kinds of other ones out there. You can choose whoever you want, but a tiny one of those servers is going to be your entry point, and then Netbird is going to help you get into your network using a tunnel. You don't have to have any ports open on your firewalls. It is a much more secure way to do things. It is all encrypted from that point to your services, which is amazing. And it's the way I should have had my stuff set up for a long time. And I've set up a lot of it. I just didn't have everything set up that way. I was just taking my time, and it's time to get it done. I want to say Happy New Year. Really and truly, you guys for the last few years have just been amazing. I want to say thank you to all my patrons over at Patreon for the support that you give me every month. It is absolutely incredible, and I truly appreciate that. For everybody that sends me, buy me a beer, buy me a coffee on PayPal, man, that just makes my day. It makes me so happy when I see that stuff come through. You guys are just incredible, so thank you so very much for that. For all my subscribers on YouTube, thank you. Make sure to click the like, click the subscribe. It just helps the channel grow. It helps other people find the channel and find the information that I'm sharing. I love to hear from you guys. Give me feedback. Give me feedback about things you want to see, things you want to learn, things that you're interested in. Ask me questions. I'll do my best to answer. I don't always have the answers. I'm not a genius. I'm just a person who's learning as we go and sharing that as we go. We're on a journey together, but I'm happy to do it. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'm wishing you all the very best for the coming year. I'm excited about it, and I'm getting ready to do some really great stuff. I've got a whole bunch of videos stacked up, going through editing now. I've hired an editor to help me. She is my niece. She's amazing, and it's going to be awesome. So be patient as we get those videos out there. I'm really excited about what's coming for the new year. Now let's get into setting up our network and our home environment with Netbird so we don't have to have open ports and downtime like I did. I'm logged into my Netbird, basically dashboard, my Netbird system here, and this is self-hosted. So there's a few things. First, you have your list of peers. Now you can group your peers in several different ways, and one of those is through groups. So there's an all group that's created by default. Now you can go through and basically set up your own groups, create your routing rules and things like that, and then delete the all group if you want to. I leave it, I just turn off the routing so that you can't route between any peers that are only in the all group. So they have to be in another group before you can do anything where they can talk to each other, that kind of stuff. So I've just left it, which is, it's up to you if you want to do that or not. But one of the things I like is I can tell which things are online, which things are offline, but they've also got these nice filters so I can see online, I can see offline, so I can see what things are offline over here. So like right now my OpenWRT port is offline. I've got a few different ones here that are offline. I'll fix these later and put them back online, but for now they're offline. But I can see everything, of course, as well. You can also just start typing to get to something. So if I were to type auth, it doesn't find anything. If I type Karina, it finds my niece's, one of my niece's computers. So yeah, I've got a lot of different ways to kind of see these different devices that I'm trying to support with this. Now, adding a device on the Netbird network is super straightforward. Whether you're using Windows, Mac, Linux, phone, tablet, it doesn't matter, okay? But one of the things that you do need to understand is if you're logging in from a desktop type system, so for instance, this one logs in. When you go into it, I'm going to click here. It's going to open up a page that gives me a bunch of information about it. One of the things you might want to turn off is this login expiration. It just depends on the user. You might want to leave this on where it expires after a certain while and they have to re-authenticate to reconnect. That's completely up to you, and whenever you're doing a business, this is probably something you want to leave enabled. But if it's for you or your family or something inside your network, this is something you probably want to make sure is turned off so that your devices stay connected. Do you want to allow SSH access over your Netbird network to these devices? If you do, for each device, you need to enable this feature or make sure that it's enabled at the very least. And then finally, here are the groups that these devices are assigned to. So this particular device is assigned to all and home. And this home group is going to be important in a little bit. So I've got multiple groups, and I'll click here just so you can see. I've got one called home. I've got one called DNS servers because these are literally my DNS servers. And I've got one called DRSP, which is for a client that I have. So the DRSP machines are only accessible from one of my machines and then to each other on the network. But I also have an ingress route or an egress route, depending on how you want to look at it. I am egressing from my Netbird network into their LAN. I have the same thing on my home network. I have an egress node where I can egress from the Netbird network into my LAN. It could be an ingress where you're ingressing into your LAN. It just depends on how you're looking at it, but you understand what I'm kind of getting at there. So the way that we set that up is there's these network routes. And you can see here I've got home LAN and DRSP network. So what I've done is I've gone through and said, hey, I want to be able to access these things, and I need to set up a device that acts as that ingress point on each network. So I'll go through that more in the future, but once I've set up that device, which I'll show you what that device is here in my list of peers, and we'll just do ingress, yeah. So here's my Netbird ingress. This is one of my devices. This is just running in an Incus container on my home network. So I set this thing up, and it's going to just re-authenticate me real quick into the Netbird system. Just give it a second. There we go. So I set up this Netbird ingress, and you can see here I don't have SSH access to it over the tailnet, which I should probably enable because I do want to be able to access it, and I'll save that change. And it doesn't ever log out, so it never expires. But you can see here, it's part of the home group. So this is important because I want all of my systems on the home network to be in the same network, and I want them to be able to communicate. So like this computer that I'm on right now is a part of the home network. It's actually a part of all of the networks, so it's on all of them. But I can access anything on any other group that I have. So this is a way to segregate your machines, and you can name them in ways that make sense. So if I had multiple clients, if I had a client that was a bank, I could type in Bob's Bank. And if I had a client that was a car dealership, I could put in Bill's Auto, and so on and so forth, and then add their machines only to their group, and then make sure my machine is added to their group so that I can access those things when I need to, and make sure that everything's up to date and have remote access that's nice and secure over a virtual private network. we have these routes. So I created this one called my home route. And you can see it's through my Netbird ingress peer. And it says right here, it's going to run through these ports, and it says it's active, so I can deactivate it anytime. And it's only for home, for the home devices. Those are the only ones that can access this. So I don't have to worry about the machines on the DRSP network getting into my home network, because they're not allowed into my home network because they're not a part of that group. The same way, they don't have to worry about my home network devices getting into their network, because none of my home devices except for my main machine are a part of their network. So this is a really great way to create an access point. So with this, I don't have to use the IP address assigned by Netbird, but I can actually use the IP addresses in my network no matter where I am. If I am connected to Netbird with a device that has access to my home group, I can access any of my LAN devices by their normal LAN IP. Now that's really great when your LAN is functioning correctly. But in my case, my LAN was not functioning correctly and things were not working the way I expected, but they still had access to Netbird. If I had set it up so that I could just access them through the Netbird system, it would have been much easier for sure when I'm talking about my services, if I'm using the Netbird IP address. It's not that I have to, it's just that it would have been great if I had, because it would have been easier to get to a few things that I needed, such as my authentication. I can't access Netbird if I can't access my authentication. I can't access VaultWarden. I can't get my passwords for all the things that I need to access, such as my authentication. So there's a lot of things that come down to, you're going to self-host it. You're responsible for giving yourself access to it. So we're going to go here. We're going to add a new peer. In fact, it's going to be for my VaultWarden system. So I'm just going to get rid of this so it's not filtered out. I'm just going to click on Create. It's this easy. I'm going to copy this command right here to install it for Linux. Now, if you have Windows, you go here. If you have Mac OS, you go here. If you go to iOS, if you go to Android, and if you go to Docker. So they've got installers for pretty much everything. So I'm just going to click on Linux because it's a Linux machine. I'm going to go there. I'm already SSH'd into it. And I'll just prove. So I'm going to do netbird status. And you see it's not even installed. It doesn't know that command. So I'm just going to paste in that command. It's going to install Netbird for me. I'm going to give it my super user password here. Just takes a second. And I've shown you guys this in the past, but it's always worth going through again. This is a system without a user interface. So the way that we add our device to the Netbird network is a little bit different than if you have a user interface, a graphical user interface, because you can use the authentication through the browser to get connected. But in this case, we're going to use a setup key, which is great. They're individual setup keys and they're private. It'll go through all of that stuff, and then down here it's going to say, hey, all you have to do is Netbird up. And this is correct if you are going to use your Netbird system through their servers, which is fine. You would have to still give it a setup key, but in this case, it's telling you like, hey, do Netbird up and we'll open up a browser and prompt you to log in. That's correct if you have a graphical user interface. If you don't have a graphical user interface, like this system doesn't, I'm SSH'd into it, we need to give it a setup key. Now, I don't want to use Netbird up. I want to use the command for my self-hosted server in this case. So I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to copy that command. I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm going to paste that in. And then at the end, I'm going to hit a space and I'm going to do -- setup -key, and then one more space. And then I'm going to go generate a setup key from my Netbird instance here. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to say create a Netbird setup key. I'm going to call this VaultWarden, just like that. And then we're going to see right here, I don't want to use this key over and over. It should not be anything that expires in 7 days. That's when the key expires, so you can make that shorter, longer, whatever you want. It doesn't need to be an ephemeral peer, so I'm going to leave that off. That's for like your phones, things like that. They're connecting and disconnecting all the time. You can set that if you want to. And then here I do want it to be a part of certain group. So I want it to be a part of my home group. Okay, so I'm going to set that home group and I'm going to create this key. Now I'm going to blur the key when it comes up on the screen, but it's going to give me a key on the screen here. And I'm just going to copy this key. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to paste that key right here at the end of the command. Again, I'm going to blur that out. And I'm going to hit enter. And all it's going to do is tell me it connected. Now I can clear that out. If I do netbird status, you can see I've got my netbird information, I've got my netbird IP address, so that's what it assigned to this machine. And if I want to see all the things that I'm connected to, so you can see I've got 15 of 21 connected for my peers. So I've got 15 peers that are connected. If I want to see that here in the command line, I can do netbird status-d, and it's going to give me all of these. Okay, so it gives me a whole lot of information about all my peers that I'm connected to, and that's through that group that I just created. So this is a really easy way to get your system set up on the Netbird interface. So now I've got a Netbird IP address for this machine, this VaultWarden machine. The next step is I want to go to where I'm going to set up my reverse proxy, which is outside my LAN, and I want to use my Netbird IP to point back to my VaultWarden instance. So we're going to go do that next. All right, the next thing we need to do is set up our reverse proxy. So I've got my reverse proxy out here on a hosted system on the internet itself, not inside of my LAN. And the first thing I want to do is give this a name, and the name that I've been using, and I just want to keep it the same, so I'm just going to keep it that way. So it's going to be vault.routemehome.org. I'm going to hit tab so it becomes a little chip like that. And then I'm going to put in that IP address that I got for that system through Netbird. So I'll go back to my Netbird install here, or to my VaultWarden install. And we'll just do netbird status. And we can just grab this IP address right here, just like that. Now, I need to know what port I'm actually running VaultWarden on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my actual current proxy manager for it. And we'll search. And it's running on 8062, so I need to put that in here the same way. And of course, I want to block common exploits and WebSocket support. I'm just going to hit save for now. So now if I do vault, you'll see I've got that entry. Now I can't set this up yet with the HTTPS through Let's Encrypt because I don't actually have my routemehome.org pointing to it. So I also need to go adjust that. So I'm going to go to dns1.routemehome.org. This is my DNS server on Technitium, which I've got a video on this as well. So in here I can go to my zones and I can go to my routemehome.org zone, and you can see here this is what got me. I have this @ record, which is your main A record, and this is pointed to my current public home IP address. And then further down I've got, and it's actually on the next, it's right here, I've got this other A record. So this I did not change because I couldn't see it because it was scrolled off the screen. So I changed this one, thought everything was good, went on about my business. And no, it wasn't, because I didn't have it set correctly. I also needed to change this one. Now the smart thing to do is to change this record from being an A record to being a CNAME record. So we can go in and just delete this one. You can't change the type in Technitium, but I can delete that. Now I can add a new type of record, and I can make it a CNAME record. And I can make this asterisk for the wildcard. And then the domain that it's going to use, and in most cases you could use an @ but I don't think Technitium will let us do this. We can try. Yeah, it won't. It won't let me do the @ even though that should technically just work, but that's okay. We'll do routemehome.org and save. So now I've got a CNAME record that should point to my A record, which is great. So we can test that in our terminal. And we can just do ping auth.routemehome.org. So currently it's pinging on the right IP address. We'll check it again here in about 10 minutes. Now that's again my home IP address. What I want is to update this IP address to be the public IP address of my server. So we're going to exit and I'll SSH into my server. And this is the server where I'm actually running the Nginx proxy manager that's out on the internet that I want to use. So we're just going to do IP-BR-4A. And we can just grab the actual public IP address here, which is this one right here. It's a little bit odd that it's this one, but it is. But there, ETH0, so 192.3.148.11. And we'll go here and we'll adjust our A record, our at record. And that's set for 10 minutes, so we'll just save that. We're going to give it about 10 minutes to get updated, and then we'll come back and check it. While we're waiting for that to update on the DNS side, this is really what we're setting up. So from the internet, a request is made to go to one of my services that I host. That request should be pointed by DNS to my reverse proxy, which is out on the internet. The reverse proxy then goes through Netbird and can access my LAN either through the ingress node that I already have, or in this case, I'm going to set up all of the services that I can on my Netbird network, and I'm going to use the Netbird IP address. So even though they're inside my LAN, they're actually using the Netbird IP. So in this case, it becomes a peer-to-peer connection. So I'm going from a reverse proxy straight to this peer. I'm not having to go through any relay nodes or anything like that. It's just saying, hey, I see that peer. I'm going to go ahead and go over here. And the way I accomplished that was by adding a group called home. And then I make sure that each of these peers and this is all part of that group called home. That lets me connect these things together through Netbird and make sure that they can reach each other. So this is really what we're setting up. Even though it seems like a lot of little steps that we're having to do, the first thing we have to do is make sure we have a public IP address through whatever server we're using, whether that's DigitalOcean, whether that's Linode, whether that's Oracle free tier, it doesn't matter. This needs to have a public IP address. Then you run your reverse proxy software. That could be Traefik, that could be Nginx Proxy Manager, that could be Caddy, it could be whatever you prefer. You also need to have a DNS entry that says, hey, when somebody asks for anything.yourdomain.com, it points to the public IP address where your reverse proxy is running. So it gets a request, it says, hey, I see that request, let me see if I have that in my list. So maybe you're auth.migratedomain.com. It says, let me see if I have auth.migratedomain.com in my list. Oh, I do. It has a Netbird IP address. Let me just push you over there so that you can authenticate. The other way it could happen is you say, I want vault.migratedomain.com. It goes up to DNS. It says, hey, here's the public IP. This sees the request and says, let me see if that is in my list. Oh, it is. It has a normal LAN address. I'm going to push you through the Netbird tunnel using the Netbird egress node or ingress node, depending on how you look at it. And I'm going to get you to that LAN address. Again, these are all on the same network. So it makes it really great that you have two different ways to do this, two different options for accomplishing what you're trying to do, and it still runs through a secure VPN network that's very fast. WireGuard is extremely fast as well as being very secure. So this is what we're trying to accomplish with this setup. Okay, it's been about 10 minutes and I ran a ping and it does look like the main domain is pinged to the right IP address. Let's check one of our subdomains. So ping auth.routemehome.org. And it is also pinging to the correct IP address. So let's go back to our browser and we've got these set up. So let's go in here. We're going to edit. So remember I just set this up with HTTP only to start because I didn't have it pointed to the right place yet. Got it pointed to my IP address for my Netbird system. I'm going to go over to SSL and I'm going to say request a new SSL certificate, force SSL, HTTP2 support, and HSTS, and agree to the Let's Encrypt terms of service. I'm going to hit save. If it can find an endpoint and actually get to it, it should give me a Let's Encrypt certificate. And basically if this pop-up just goes away like that, it should be good, and it should say Let's Encrypt right here when you've got that. So now we can click on auth.routemehome.org, and it should take me to my authentication provider, which is Authentic, which is self-hosted. So I am now doing exactly what I showed here in the diagram. I'm going from the internet, making a request. DNS is pointing it to my public IP address for my server on the internet. The reverse proxy is looking it up in the list and saying, oh yeah, I see it, here you go, here's that server. Now, I have a Home Assistant server. I tried to set up the Netbird integration on it. It didn't work. It's probably something with my Home Assistant server more than the integration. But for that one, I'm going to keep it where it actually goes through this route and uses its LAN IP address but I can still access Home Assistant when I'm away from home if I want to, which is really great, and it makes it really easy to do those kind of things. So I like that. I still have this option as well. So this was just one example of how to do these things. I just wanted to show you how to set this up. I think it's super useful, and after the troubles that I've had over the last couple of weeks, I really should have had this, not even the last couple of weeks, last couple of days, I really should have had this set up to begin with. It would have made things a lot easier and much more serviceable in the long run. I had to do a lot of weird workarounds and things and changing and waiting, and I could have just helped myself by setting it up like this to start with. So definitely, if you have this opportunity and this option and you haven't done it yet, especially if you're just starting with your home lab and these services, definitely consider taking this route. It is a really, really easy way to do it. And again, if you don't want to go through the trouble of setting up Netbird for yourself, it's an awesome project. I am not being sponsored by Netbird for this video. They are not paying me for this video in any way. I just happen to love the way that it works, and I love that it's self-hostable, that it's fully open source is awesome. But if you want to use their services, you can go out to, and I'll show you, netbird.io. You can sign up for an account, okay? And when you do, you're going to get up to, I believe, 5 users and 100 devices at no cost. There is no monthly subscription fee to have that. That's 100 devices. I have a lot of devices and a lot of VMs. I don't think I have 100. So 100 devices is an insane number. And then 5 users. So up to 5 users that you can set up to have access to this network. And somebody asked me once, well, why would I want to set up users? It's really a device-based thing. Well, you can have a device that's authenticated by a user, and that user has to be the one who authenticates on their device. It's just a security protocol. If you want to set it up all through your own user, you can, and if you want to give them keys and set them up in groups and create access lists, you can do that, but you can use the user information as well. It's a really, really great tool. I really like it, and I'm going to use it for my home network the way that I've been talking about. But definitely, if you don't want to set up and host Netbird yourself out there on the internet, you should 100% consider just taking them up on their offer to have 5 users and 100 devices. And again, if you're an IT person or a business person, you're looking for something for your business, they have an incredible system set up. You can set up so many awesome things. And on top of that, they have a really affordable payment system so that you can do some subscription, get some extra features, get some extra help, get support, things like that. The things that you look for in business that are super important. And it all still stays open source. I think that's amazing. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned from my mistakes and my pain a little bit. If you did, click that like, click that subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along the open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.